My name is Professor Michael Adams. I have the honour of being the Dean of the School of Law at Western Sydney University. I've been a professor, I was a professor previously at UTS in corporate law. I also have the honour of being Deputy Chair of the Council of Australian Law Deans, so I interact with all the 40-odd law schools. I sit as a member of the New South Wales Legal Professions Admissions Board, LPAB. I also sit on the Law Society Specialist Accreditation Board, and with Michael Legg sit on the Australian Pro Bono Centre at the University of New South Wales. So it gives me some relevant insights, I guess, across the profession. And can I say thank you to the Law Society for this initiative? I think it's very timely, and also I'd like to formally acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today and show our respects.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say by way of opening?
Yes, if I may, I'll just make a few preliminary comments, then very happy to answer as best I can the questions that you've outlined and on supplementary questions. Western Sydney has been a really interesting experience and of what seems like a new law school, but in fact this year we're celebrating our 21st year. So there's that degree of maturity that comes with 21 years of time. And it was interesting to hear some of the other speakers talk about Sydney University and University of New South Wales, and then to include UTS. I was at UTS for 18 years, and to see it go from being a new university with only a part-time law degree to being this now well-established and part of the infrastructure. And I think we're beginning to celebrate that. We actually have the dubious honour of being probably the largest law school in New South Wales and third largest in Australia. And that was due to a rapid growth in 2008 to 2012, where we actually increased from a first year intake of 400 students to 650. And that causes some logistical headaches, as you can imagine, when you're that sort of size. The upside is you have more additional resources and some great first year programs to support such a large cohort. But I have to say that logistically, the spread of students from our very top students who certainly compete in the same markets as you would expect of every law school, down to the other end of the range, which require greater support and greater help. And it's interesting that we work on the formula of 50% of our students will expect to go into some form of legal practice, that is, they will be admitted, and 50% upfront intend to go into other careers. And so one of the practical challenges, I think, probably for any law school, is how you actually frame where half your cohort does not intend to practice law in a traditional sense. Just like we heard the Dean of Sydney say, one of my frustrations is every time I hear a newspaper article saying there are too many lawyers. In fact, I actually quote the Dean of Melbourne, who's the chair of the Council of Australian Law Deans. There's actually there's more jobs in law than there is in science, and there's constantly a claim for more scientists. Actually, there is a big demand for law, but it's how we define it. If you look at the majority of the newspaper type articles, it's about those top 10, maybe top 15 law firms. That's the only jobs that exist. And of course, we know the profession is much more complex and much wider than that. And that's quite frustrating. You will be interested to know that as a law school at 21 years old, we have decided, in fact, next year we will be cutting back on our intake as a deliberate strategy, partially to strengthen the opportunities and the support mechanisms. We've actually redesigned our first year, and we'll be getting more face-to-face time for some introductory subjects to make sure those underlying skills are absolutely critical, including statutory interpretation and case analysis and some jurisprudence. And these have been evolving over time, and we brought in an external consultant to really build something nice and fresh and new. One of the things Western Sydney has really built has been the social justice aspect, which we built a community law centre called the PCJC, based in the Parramatta Court. And many people, I'm sure, have seen the video of Dang Adut, the refugee, and it was open day yesterday, in fact, and I was with Dang, and we were in our wonderful moot court using some of our latest technology, which I'll expand on. But that theme, we must state that Dang Adut is a very successful practicing lawyer with a law firm that's grown from 1 lawyer to 8 and is doing very well. But he is not our typical student, but it is great that we were able to provide an opportunity to a refugee who has gone on to absolutely excel. And it's quite interesting that I've got to know Dang even better because actually he's joined my class. I teach a master's class in international governance, and he's actually joined that class, which is quite interesting. I think that's probably enough for the moment in terms of broad statements, and happy to answer some questions.
Thank you. Where do you see the legal profession in 15 to 20 years' time?
I think that is a challenge to know. I think technology, without doubt, will make an impact, and I actually have some interest in the whole blockchain technology. I think there are certain parts of the profession which will be really challenged. Once we get over the regulatory processes, the whole area of like cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin, etc., will start to show that transactional based, such as property, lends itself to smart contracts, the ability to absolutely verify the ownership or whatever it may be, and I think that will be seen as a whole world of change, and in that sort of time frame, without any shadow of doubt. But I have to say, I do believe, on behalf of the law school and personally, that the underlying skills that lawyers bring to the table, those interpretation skills, the analytical skills, the fact that 80% of our students are combined degrees, and so that multidisciplinary approach means that technology won't be the answer. So much is about that interpretation, so much is about that weighing up of evidence, and I'm using that in its broadest context, which will make a difference. But I think the profession will continue to change. I wonder how the smaller suburban solicitor will survive, as we've already seen with changes like in the Civil Liability Act, in conveyancing, and those sort of traditional, safe houses of financial income have changed dramatically. So I think we will start to see some real developments occur. But I'm also seeing so many of our law students, and I'm now talking both Western Sydney and broader, actually using it for policy work, so going into, certainly in our case, federal government, state government, local government, and other, there are so many departments. We also have a number who go into the police force, not just as police prosecutors, but in a range of policy areas. It is really quite amazing how law, in that sense, is evolving to be, I think it's too far of a stretch to say it's a modern arts degree, but it's certainly seen as a quality add to a broader career. So the actual legal profession itself, to come back to that core part of the question, I think will change and adapt. I think there will be clearly a role in some areas which machinery, as yet I can't envisage being able to solve the same problems in the same way. The other big change, of course, is internationalisation. I'm not sure technology, yes, can convey information, but it can't quite get around some of the intricacies of understanding different legal systems and different interfaces. And I think that's something we're noticing, and that more and more of our students want to spend time overseas. We sent 25 to Shanghai, for example, this year, and there were real demand and interest in Chinese law. We have the same sort of program in Japan and Europe. So there's a lot happening at the moment.
How do you see the division of responsibilities between universities, PLT providers, and law firms in making the new lawyers adaptable to the changes that are taking place and will take place?
Yeah. As a general statement, I think more cooperation. I think one of the things I've noticed, I attended recently a LAC meeting on behalf of the, actually representing CALD, but obviously my colleagues from the LPAB were there as well, and you realise that some of the conversations, there are gaps missing. In other words, just our simple communications between, again, I had the pleasure of hearing some earlier evidence being provided. Statute interpretation has been a bone of contention between what was perceived as a skill that was missing, and in fact the law school saying, well, we have 38 to 40 law schools in Australia, they all teach it slightly differently. Some do have standalone courses, some teach it in another way. When we actually drilled down into the detail, I think there was a complete lack of awareness due probably to simple communication issues. So to answer your question, my belief is that it's a partnership between certainly the profession, so the admitting authorities, PLT providers and universities. I don't think we all do a great job at communicating what we're actually doing, and that could be certainly improved.
Thank you. Does the LPAB have a role to play in that partnership?
I think it does. I believe it has certainly plays a quality control mechanism. It's certainly my experience, and I've been now on that committee for 5 years or so, the scrutiny that things are applied, whether it be where foreign lawyers coming in, where there's been plagiarism or academic misconduct, the whole disclosure regimes, working closely under the uniform rules with Victoria, and that's been an interesting distinction of how different legal professions approach. The role of the bar and the Law Society, their input's incredibly valuable. So it's been, as an academic, and I also said the Dean of UTS is also on that same committee, has been fascinating to understand the requirements and the demands. But yes, I believe actually they do have a major role to play.
Thank you.
Professor Adams, one of the things that I spoke about with one of the witnesses at last week's hearing was the interest that students have in working in-house or in government roles, and I have a team of about 7 lawyers, and we have never been approached by anybody ever asking if a student wanted to come and do work experience with us. And I actually borrowed somebody from Gary's firm at Christmas time. I'm interested to know if the universities have an interest in teaching students or giving them opportunities to do training in in-house roles or in government roles. I mean, the statistics say we currently make up 30% of the profession, and I just don't see anybody paying attention to us, if I could put it that way.
Sure. Claire, can I say that in our particular university where we're based at Parramatta, we also do have a campus at Campbelltown in terms of the law school. Actually, a number of our people do work in government departments in particular. So in-house counsel type roles, certainly my own background is there, and I have held that role. So yes, there's some degree of promotion, but certainly in the government side of lawyer opportunities, where it'd be obviously from legal aid right through to Sydney Water is based around the corner, and they take a number of our students. Australian Taxation Office has 800 employees at Parramatta alone, and I know 10 or 20 of our students work there.
Really?
So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities, and it's something we certainly do promote quite heavily in that sense in terms of those career options, and sometimes even just the work experience. And also one of the interesting things we have discovered is that we have some quite, as you probably know, Parramatta as a legal district is incredibly busy. And what's happened is sometimes the good law students will start working in a local firm, be attracted to the bright lights of the CBD, and will then transfer to a bigger firm. And then often, as soon as they start to develop in their life to family, will actually return to work within the Parramatta and that part of Sydney because of the commute and those other aspects. So it's been quite an interesting. We run a number of cadet programs with law firms, and they while they're doing their studies, they will work closely with that law firm and the best ones. In fact, a great example, if I can give one, Taylor McDonald started with Coleman Gregg, a big commercial firm, but in the Parramatta area, went to Mallison's, and now is actually going to next year Justice Virginia Bell's associate, and then but is looking to beyond that probably to return to the more local area. So that's quite interesting. So those opportunities. Now, if I was one of the other universities, they could probably name a lot more examples, but we would every year have, and it was quite exciting to hear one of ours has just come back from Oxford who's at Allen's, and they filter through, but they are a smaller number that I'd like to do, and I'd like to see more confidence in going to a range of areas.
I was just wondering, putting technology to the side for a moment, are there particular skills or areas of knowledge that needed to be added to the law school curriculum?
The answer is yes. I mean, I've heard you've had the discussion about Pre-C 11 and space and all, and the electives, and 80% of our students are combined degrees, so that's the 5-year program, and so as such, there's not a lot of spare space. However, one of the things we certainly right from the beginning did, for example, in criminal law, they will do a bail application. So they do something quite practical. We've got 2 beautiful moot courts. They're fully digital, so it's easy to record and play back. And we've built a number of exercises. Originally, there was even higher level of skills. So for every 3 hours of academic content, there was an hour of skills. That has changed over time. And many people would like to see more of that type of activity, so drafting. But one of the things we certainly did do is put alternative dispute resolution is a mandatory core subject. So we used to have it as part of civil procedure and originally with ADR. Now it's civil procedure and arbitration, we teach those together. But we have a standalone mandatory ADR subject, and we believe that is exactly the type of skill set that our students will need for the future, because obviously more and more, whether it be in family law space where it's mandatory through to commercial disputes, so having those negotiations. And that goes through to, we work closely with our law society, the Law Students Association, and and support a whole range of the usual mooting and client interviewing skills and all those sort of activities. And one of the things there, we've just represented Australia at the International Negotiation Competition in Switzerland and came second in the world, which again is great for those two individuals. But it was also, those sort of preparations and skills that one would expect, and we found that a very successful model.